Governor Holcomb's 8th and final veto, Brad Chambers' economic plan, plus Jamie Reitenour's exclusion from debates, and more. From the television studios at WFYI, it's Indiana Week in Review for the week ending March 22nd, 2024.
Indiana Week in Review is made possible by the supporters of Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations.
This week, Governor Eric Holcomb vetoed a bill that would define and ban anti-Semitism in state public education institutions. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Violet Crumber-Weiland reports the governor said the bill didn't go far enough to prevent anti-Semitism.
The bill that passed out of both the House and the Senate used the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, but leaves out IHRA's examples of anti-Semitism. In a press release, the governor says he is unable to sign this legislation as it failed to incorporate the entire IHRA definition. The inclusion of these examples in initial legislation drew controversy, with critics saying they prevented free speech and conflated criticism of the State of Israel with anti-Semitism. The governor also signed a proclamation that says Indiana endorses the IHRA working definition, including its examples. The Indianapolis Jewish Community Relations Council and several lawmakers released statements in support of the proclamation.
Does the governor's proclamation accomplish the issue's overarching goal? It's the first question for our Indiana Week in Review panel. Democrat Ann DeLaney. Republican Mike O'Brien. John Schwantes, host of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly, editor-in-chief of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. I'm Indiana Public Broadcasting Statehouse Bureau Chief Brandon Smith. Mike O'Brien, is this if not surprising, a satisfactory conclusion to this?
I don't think it was surprising necessarily. It's surprising that House Bill 1002, the second priority among the House Republicans, because any time that happens, that's a surprise. How this bill progressed through the process, though, where the standard accepted definition passed through the House, they kind of monkeyed with it in the Senate, which caused both the Muslim community and the Jewish community to switch their positions on the bill, which caused everybody to pause. And then they tried to kind of put it back together in the end. I think this is probably the best outcome, and it's also the outcome that most states have done. Most states don't have this in statute; they have it in some form of proclamation. That varies. The legal impact of that varies. They have resolutions or proclamations. So my guess is that the legislature is going to say, all done with that, and move on. Because this is about sending the message, and the message has been sent.
A colleague of ours, Dan Cardin, questioned whether any bill with that many co-sponsors, it was like 3/4 of the House and many in the Senate, if a bill with that many co-sponsors had ever been vetoed before, and I don't think we can find one.
I'm sure.
But to that end, this is also very unlikely to be overridden, would you say?
Yeah. What's amazing to me is the two top priorities. 101, which is supposed to reform post-high school workforce training, got gutted, okay? And 1002, they passed something, and then the governor vetoes it, and the House members start applauding, or the House leadership starts applauding. This is a message bill. That's all it is. It doesn't have any teeth behind it. Unfortunately, it is not going to. It doesn't have the impact that legislation with some penalty behind it might have. And anti-Semitism is real. There is no question about that. Okay? I have said before, it's the original sin of Europeans. It is. It started there, and it's never been put to rest. And we have to stand against it, and that's all this does. It's just a message bill. That's all it is. And we would hope that the people in authority in the universities and the K through 12 would be alert to this and take appropriate action if that is being taught or disseminated within the schools. And that's what it's going to take to root it out.
Yeah, the bill was clearly a message bill. The proclamation is clearly a message. But is that worth doing anyway? I mean, isn't even sending that message
Absolutely,
something
it's worth doing. Yeah, it frankly could have been done much quicker and easier without legislative efforts. However,
but then what would we have talked about on this show for 2 months?
I do think, though, having 9 weeks of discussion about, reminding people about the anti-Semitism we're seeing and what counts as anti-Semitism, what doesn't count as anti-Semitism, that's a good dialogue for the state to have.
Sure.
So.
I think we could have asked this if the bill had been signed into law. I think we can ask the same question now that the bill has been vetoed and the proclamation has been issued. Fundamentally, will anything change for the people of Indiana?
No. As I've said in earlier weeks when this came up, I said, hate is real. Ann's right. And not just anti-Semitism, but Islamophobia. There's sorts of hate is real. It's with us. Hate is a bad thing. Stipulate that. But trying to stamp it out through the legal process, I think is an impossibility. It just is. I mean, and had this been signed, I'm guessing at some point somewhere there would have been what amounted to a test case where some faculty member was censured or some student was either suspended or expelled because of something perceived to run afoul of this statute, and it would have ended up in court. In fact, somebody might have actually pushed the issue to get it in court, and that just will literally relitigate this over and over and over. So much time was expended on this, but as I said last week, I understand why, and certainly we condemn hate, period, flat out, bad.
Tell that to Donald Trump.
But he's not protected by Indiana's.
No, but he calls immigrants inhuman animals. That's not hate?
But in terms of the correlation or the ratio between amount of time expended on an issue and the direct, tangible impact, aside from messaging, that's the biggest gap.
Yeah. All right, former State Commerce Secretary Brad Chambers says the #1 job of a governor is to grow the economy and increase wages. And the Republican gubernatorial candidate unveiled his 10-point economic plan this week. The plan includes tax reform, entrepreneurship support, child care access, and housing availability. Chambers says boosting economic growth unlocks so many other possibilities.
A growing economy allows us to fix education, make sure we have police and fire, make sure that mental health and health care is being addressed.
Part of Chambers' plan includes continuing with the strategies he led during his tenure at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Some of those, most notably the development of the LEAP district in central Indiana, have been sharply criticized by other candidates, some legislators, and local leaders. But while Chambers says he's learned lessons from that experience, he says the state can't stop its work to develop sites in a bid to lure big investment.
I put us in a position to be ready, right, with the LEAP Innovation District. We're either going to focus on high-wage careers, growing our economy, keeping our kids and our grandkids in Indiana, or we're not.
Early in-person voting for Indiana's primary begins April 9th. Ann DeLaney, Chambers is increasingly positioning himself as the Mitch Daniels candidate in this election. His new ad, in fact, doesn't even allude, it goes beyond illusions. It straight up says he's Ronald Reagan and Mitch Daniels. If you like those two, you'll like Brad Chambers. Can that be a winning strategy?
You know, you'd almost think they hadn't been in total control for the last 20 years. I remember Mitch Daniels running in 2004 saying the only measure of success for a governor was income growth. 20 years later, they're like a vinyl record stuck, where the needle just keeps going over the same point. Where have they been? They've been at war with the unions. They don't want unions, which of course raises salary. Nobody's ever talked about increasing the minimum wage. Any of the things that might have an impact on wages to get us closer to the national average. The education system that they've been reforming for 20 years. The production that has produced. I mean, kids are failing in 3rd grade on reading levels. We have fewer college graduates. All of these things are done on their watch. And Mitch Daniels was 8 years of that, okay? And then the rest of them all mimicked him, except they went a little bit further to the right on issues involving personal freedoms. But I don't know whether it can win among Republican primary voters anymore who are to the right of Attila the Hun. That's the question. And I don't know whether they can induce people who are quote, independent or leaning Republican independents who don't run in primary or don't vote in primaries ordinarily to come out and support him. Because I think, unfortunately, the vast majority of the Republican primary voters are to the right of Attila the Hun on all of the issues.
It's clear that Brad Chambers has this lane all to himself in this gubernatorial primary. Can it be successful?
It's mathematically possible, and it's only possible with the rest of the field being what it is. Yeah. When you've got You've got 6 competing for, I mean, just make the math simple. It's not 100% of voters that are voting on May 7th. It's people who identify and turn out in Republican primaries. That's 35% of the electorate. It's high 30s self-identify as Republicans in Indiana.
But how many of them turn out?
And more of a vote Republican than
So you need to
that,
you need to win a plurality of that, which is a very small number of actual voters if you zoom out to the entire electorate. So my thought on Brad Chambers from the beginning was he needs to be like the extreme moderate in the race, which sounds funny, but he needs to go like really embrace moderation. And the people that got him in the race to begin with are the Mitch Daniels. It's the Mitch Daniels crowd of people, like the people that worked for him. Yeah. And so the whole point was to appeal to that audience. Does he have the time to do it? Did he do it too late? Well, is there still a path? What do all these undecideds do? What are they waiting for? They may be waiting for somebody that sounds different. Suzanne's trying to do that.
They may also be waiting for to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all pay so much attention to this and have for a long time.
It's like, oh, right, I got to go vote for governor.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how most voters like.
The session is over. Early voting starts April 9th. Now, I think, is the time when a lot of people are going, oh, yeah.
So I think there's still a path for all of these, or I would say 3 of these people, but. And I think Chambers he's got to own. You're right. He's the only guy in that lane. He's got to go own it. And he's got to be loud and pretty rough about it.
And what does he do on the social issues? What does he do then?
I think that's part. I think there's. I don't know. One, I don't know him. I don't know what he actually believes in that regard. But if he is a moderate on those things, or if any of these candidates were moderates, that certainly makes you sound different. If 6 of them are standing on stage and they ask you about abortion, they're all going to sound identical. And it's like, all right, well, if I'm a abortion motivated voter on either side,
I'm not going there.
I don't know what to do with that answer.
Right.
I'm not going one direction or the other with that.
Yeah.
I'm also struck, and we talked a little bit about this, I think, last week, but I'm struck by the fact that on, the one issue where Chambers is arguably the most vulnerable is, of course, the LEAP district and the IEDC in general, which he led for 2 years, the last 2 years, roughly, before leaving about 6, 7, 8 months ago. And far from, he couldn't obviously come out and say, oh, yeah, I'm against everything I just spent 2 years doing, because then he'd have nothing to talk about in that regard. But far from, repudiating what he did, he's not just saying, oh, yeah, I did what was right at the time, but now I do something. He's saying, I did it once, and I do it again, and I'm going to keep doing it because that's the way to win. Are you surprised that he's going that far in that direction?
Not really, because I think that, and this dovetails with what Mike just said, that's what he has to do.
It's his only option.
It's only option. He can't say, I had an epiphany since I left that office. I saw a vision, and it didn't involve the LEAP district. I repudiate all that.
Well, at the same time, though, Suzanne Crouch, who's never said a word about COVID-19, well, now I don't agree with anything.
To a certain extent, that was his baby.
Yes, that's true.
So I think, I agree. From a strategic standpoint, the way to stand out is to, whether it's social issues, whether it's economic issues, be different, be distinct. And it's as crazy as that sounds, it's basically being what Bob Orr was when Bob Orr was running for re-election against Wayne Townsend and a woman named Ann DeLaney. It's what John Mutz did when they were running against Evan Bayh. It's what, just go down the line. I never would have thought that I had seen the time when economic development and job creation was the wedge issue in the Republican primary. If there was one thing I always thought was a rallying cry for Republicans, it's job creation is good, economic development is good. And now it breaks down along who's making those decisions. Yeah. Is it done behind closed doors? Is it the elite?
Yes.
Is it helping?
Yes.
Is it a top-down approach, or is it
Or is it help?
Yeah.
Does it overlook the agrarian portion of our state in favor of certain?
He's doing something, though, to try to back off a little bit by having a water council or whatever the heck he's calling it out there, admitting the fact that they didn't consider the water issues before they went ahead with it.
At this point, is this Brad Chambers trying to make his move? Is that what we're starting to see?
Yeah, and it's a good move on his part, but he's going to have to do it times 100. Yeah. He's going to have to go full on and not just dip in a little. Yeah, and he did mention the water czar, if you want to call it, And I do think in that press conference he was at, he did make one small concession that maybe his approach to LEAP would have been different. And I do think that's been a lot of the issue is what, it was transparent. Right. It wasn't transparent. It was secretive, that kind of thing.
Didn't engage with local leaders and local folks enough.
There's a lot of similarities to the major moves, at least at the toll road.
He's making that comparison.
It's very similar to that because that was a wild idea. No one had ever heard of it before. And this is the same thing. It's new, so there you have controversy over the water issues and the utility issues.
And
He's drawn that
You know what this
parallel
reminds me of, though?
And you didn't see it coming.
It's like
so,
Mike
yeah, you didn't get
Pence
ahead of
when
it.
he was running for president a few months back. Distant memory now, seems foggy. And he was very careful early on, didn't want to distance himself too much from his former boss, Donald Trump. But then he finally said, I'm going to double down. I'm going to own the fact that I was a dissenter, that I upheld the vote and decided that I didn't have the right to sidetrack it. And, of course, he did that a week before I think he dropped out of
Well,
the point being that you need to do it early, and you need to, especially, something like this.
Hit it hard.
Hit it hard. Don't just wait till the last minute.
All right, Republican gubernatorial candidate Jamie Reitenour says local television stations should correct the injustice of excluding her from primary debates. Fox 59, CBS 4, and Wish TV will both host debate next week for Indiana's GOP gubernatorial primary. Fox 59, CBS 4, and Wish TV will both host debates for Indiana's Republican gubernatorial primary. To get into those debates, local Fox CBS owner Nexstar requires candidates to have reached at least 5% in public polling and $100,000 in campaign contributions. That bars both Reitenour and former Attorney General Curtis Hill. Wish TV's criteria aren't publicly available, though Reitenour has said it's a $300,000 contribution requirement. Some of the other candidates have called on the stations to include all candidates on the ballot, but Reitenour says some, including U.S. Senator Mike Braun, considered the frontrunner, have been silent.
If the candidates will not stand for what is right now, why would Hoosiers believe they will stand for Hoosiers later?
Reitenour points out that in the poll Nexstar is using to exclude her, 43% of people were undecided on the race. Niki Kelly, to you, is there any acceptable argument for leaving candidates who will appear on the ballot out of a debate?
Yeah, in terms of democracy, no. We want everyone who met that same threshold to be able to get their voice out. Logistically, and, from the standpoint of how you control 6 candidates, how you try to make sure everyone has a rebuttal, how long a debate can go before viewers tune out. But, I get all those logistical questions. Journalistically, it's hard to cover something with 6 candidates and try to make sure everyone has, some sort of say and some sort of, placement in the story. So logistically, I get it, but you can't do it in terms of democracy and trying to make sure everyone has all the information they need to make a vote.
Well, and also, I think it's one thing when media organizations, before a filing deadline, say, are trying to make decisions about, listen, you only have so much time and so many resources, and anybody can say they're running for X, Y, or Z, sure. But how do we establish any sort of credibility to that? These are people who they've already met that threshold by getting on the ballot, have they not?
Which is not easy in Indiana.
No.
That's right.
I mean, 4,500 signatures, 500 from each congressional district. That is hard to do.
Registered voters.
Registered voters, excuse me. Yeah,
that's one or the other. You got to have the threshold standard, the signature threshold standard. Right. Or the public polling and where you're higher performing and how much money you're raising. You can't do both of them. I already did this really hard thing to get on the ballot. Now I'm not included in the publicly funded debate.
Right.
And also,
Suzanne was absolutely right in the way she came out on that.
And I'll say too, in terms of the criteria that they're using, now Wish hasn't made theirs public. We're relying on what Reitenour is saying is the criteria. But using fundraising as a marker.
Well, that's the thing. If you're going to use these criteria, to your point, even before the first candidate, and I know that this is impractical because you don't even know if you're going to sponsor a debate. But get those factors, those criteria out there so that everybody knows what the rules of the game are, rules of engagement before they get there. You guys always give me grief when I use this forum to plug Indiana Lawmakers. So won't plug Indiana Lawmakers today. I'm going to plug the Indiana Debate Commission debate. Thank
you. And also, Nikki and I both appear on Indiana Lawmakers.
Thank you. So let me finish my gratuitous plug. Yes. So on the Indiana Debate Commission debate on the 23rd, which happens to be moderated by me, all of the candidates are welcome and presumably will be participating.
All right. Time now for viewer feedback. Each week, we pose an unscientific online poll question. And this week's question is, should gubernatorial candidates be excluded from debates based on polling or fundraising numbers? A, yes, or B, no. Last week, we asked you whether Indiana lawmakers struck the right balance on the anti-Semitism bill. I don't know if Governor Eric Holcomb voted, but he was in the minority because 78% of you said yes, 22% said no. I will note there was about double the number of people who participated in that survey last week than normally do. If you'd like to take part in the poll, go to WFYI.org/IWIR and look for the poll. Well, this week, U.S. Senator Mike Braun picked up what could be a key endorsement in his campaign for governor, the Indiana State Police Alliance, which represents more than 2,000 active and retired state troopers. The alliance says Mike Braun will always have its back and praised his work in the U.S. Senate on some legislative issues vital to law enforcement. Braun says he's humbled and honored by the alliance's support and noted he'd also been endorsed by the National Troopers Coalition. Braun has faced sharp criticism during the campaign from his fellow Republican candidates for authoring a bill a few years ago that would have dramatically reformed qualified immunity, which acts as a shield against litigation for police. John Schwantes, endorsements, everybody gets a lot of endorsements. There's a question of how impactful they are anymore. If they come with money or, grassroots organizing, obviously more important. But because of how folks have been attacking Mike Braun, how important was this particular endorsement?
Well, and that's what this has to do with, is what he proposed back in 2020 in the Senate in terms of qualified immunity and sort of the blanket protection for police. He backed away from that under pressure from Tucker Carlson and blistering. Yeah, so he withdrew that, and he's been basically trying to make good with conservatives in the party ever since. This is a retread, but I mean that's why this came out this week, because of this criticism. But keep in mind that the alliance here in Indiana is a member, one of 43 members of the National Troopers Coalition. And in fact, if you look at the executive committee of the National Troopers Coalition, 1/5 of the membership of the executive committee happens to be the leadership of the Indiana State Police Alliance. So basically that endorsement came, I think the date on the letter was September 23rd. Yep. Been there, done that, it's over. So there's no reason other than to try to generate some extra reminders that police, the blue line is behind me. If it's from a practical standpoint, there was no other outcome for this, given what the parent organization had done. So, but politically, does that mean you shouldn't do it? I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. It's just,
how important was it for Braun to essentially remind people of that?
Oh yeah, he needed to remind people. Eric Doden especially has been hitting him with new ads about his qualified immunity stance, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to, if it's only 2,000 people, I'm not sure that's going to break the bank. But you also have to remember in endorsements, if they see the writing on the wall that Braun's going to be the governor,
that's all.
You get behind the one who's going to be in charge and giving you a raise.
Yeah, is that some of that too?
It's as cynical as that. That's all it is. And if somebody else were ahead of, the endorsement would have been different. I don't think it has any impact at all.
Of course, the irony is that the original Braun position, the one he abandoned, would have been the most popular probably in the general election. But who cares about that, I guess.
I don't know why it's a knock on Braun to say, well, you just got it because you're going to win. It's like, great.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm sure he's thrilled.
They got it because they thought he's going to win. That doesn't mean he's going to win.
Well, I'll say this.
We'll find out, but I mean, it's...
Are you surprised that, so far that seems to, other than the, you say you're a businessman, but you've been in elected office for a long time, and you went to Washington, didn't get anything done, and then now are coming back here. That's been a little bit of that. But are you surprised they haven't been hitting Mike Braun on much else besides this, which this seemingly now negates?
It totally negates. I think it completely negates it. I mean, because you're going to watch the Tucker Carlson ad. Yeah. You're about to see, I'm sure, an endorsement of the Indiana State Police of Mike Braun side by side. So I mean, if you're a voter, you're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
So in your mind, then,
the average voter is going to put the two of them together and make that
when you see them back to back,
I don't
every
think
30 seconds for the next 2 months.
I was just going to say you are. I mean, at this point, though, are you surprised we haven't seen more attacks on Mike Braun because he is considered the front?
I think they're probably coming. He has a legislative record when he was a state legislator too, and they haven't even gone after that at all
yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, finally, we're going to end, unfortunately, on a sad note. Our condolences go out to the family of State Senator Gene Braun, who passed away this week. Braun was a champion of reproductive rights, improving black infant and maternal mortality, access to healthy food in food deserts, and more. Bro had served in the Senate for more than 17 years, first elected in 2006 to the seat her mother occupied before her. Now, obviously, it's tough to say, she was in the Senate Democratic Caucus, which can only be so influential in the Indiana General Assembly. But I feel like a lot of, seeing the responses, still an impactful legislator, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, she was great to work with across, political lines, and was really just a pleasure, I think, as a colleague. That's what we've seen coming from lots of people.
She was a lovely woman, which is something that can be missing. Lovely woman, gentleman, whatever it is in the Indiana General Assembly, she was a pleasure to work with, and she remembered the things that were important to her constituents, and she argued for them. She may not have gotten them all the time, but it didn't stop her.
And also note that a friend of the show, Joey Fox, noted that, as a lobbyist, he said he always knew he had to be extra prepared going into meetings with Jean Bro because she knew
She always
her
asked
stuff.
questions, and a lot of what we did, I worked closely with Joey on a lot of healthcare issues, health policy issues, and what's lost in a lot of this conversation is, Senate Democrats have 10 members, but most of what comes through those committees is not partisan. It is not putting an R or D next to it.
Right.
And so you do have to go create consensus among all members. And she was always someone that was, he's right, was going to ask you questions. We used to kind of joke, there were times she'd kind of sound like the most conservative one in the room, where she'd be like, I don't know if the government should be doing this.
Yeah. All right, that's Indiana Week in Review for this week. Our panel is Democrat Ann DeLaney, Republican Mike O'Brien, John Schwantes of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. You can find Indiana Week in Review's podcast and episodes at wfyi.org/IWIR or on the PBS app. I'm Brandon Smith of Indiana Public Broadcasting. Join us next time, because a lot can happen in an Indiana week.
The opinions expressed are solely those of the panelists. Indiana Week in Review is a WFYI production in association with Indiana's public broadcasting stations.